Imagine building a $5 million company with a team that is spread across the globe. No central office, just a remote first approach. Today, we're diving into the story of Pedro, the founder of Bridgin, who took on the challenge of launching right at the start of the pandemic. From zero revenue to millions, he's here to review the surprising advantages of going remote first, the obstacles that he faced, and the strategies that fueled Bridgin's success. If you're ready to hear how a remote first mindset can transform a business, stay tuned. This is a story you do not want to miss. Hi, I'm Panida. I'm the host of Tech for Founder podcast. I bring you tips and strategies from top CEOs and entrepreneurs to help you build a successful startup, even without a tech background. If you are ready to level up, hit subscribe. Pedro, can you start by telling us what inspired you to create Bridgin? And what makes your company different from traditional tech consulting firms?
Yes, no, absolutely. So a big part of that is really the realization that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not, right? And a lot of, although we do work mostly with tech companies, that's simply a reason because knowledge workers can work from any location pretty much, right? In counterpoint to jobs that need to be done on site. And so that's pretty much the reason why we work mostly with tech companies, because our model, really, the goal of Regine is really to lower the barriers of bureaucracy to international expansion, right? And this is because, again, given that talent is everywhere, what happened traditionally is a lot of people to seek better conditions of life or just to have a career progression. They need to move abroad of their home countries and to other countries. And I don't believe that's good for people or even the economies, right? Because it creates an accumulation of wealth in some economies and leaves some of the other countries really poor in terms of qualified labor, and the best of the youth moves abroad. So how can we actually help fix this? And I believe one way, which is what we do at Bridgin, is try to tackle and automate, make it at least more predictable, the bureaucracy, so that companies can expand. And we are operating now in Iberia, so Portugal and Spain. So any company that wants to open operations here can do so with a lot more predictability. It is true, like I said, that most of the companies we currently work are tech companies. And I would say, just to answer the latest part of your question, why we believe that we are a better setup than more traditional tech consulting companies is it's really what a company wants to achieve and how they see and they want to treat their contributors, right? When, someone is on a nearshore or offshore IT consultancy setup to an end company, most often that's, it's a sort of a second grade contributor within a team, right? And more often than not, you can have, a big company that has direct employees and outsourced employees, and, they don't all have access to the same thing. This sort of almost caste system where some don't get exactly the same access or opportunity, I think is a very poor setup. So my core belief, and look, I've been an IT consultancy myself. I've been a developer and outsourced contributor myself, and I don't really believe that setup. I believe that employ people as direct as possible is superior. Our model is towards that. And interesting enough, we have had very good success in helping these companies attract talent precisely because of that, because their strategy in terms of talent acquisition is superior when comparing to using more traditional IT consulting companies that do outsourcing or some other ways of engagement.
So it's essentially you're allowing for international expansion of tech companies without
Correct.
losing that kind of the core of the company, like making sure that it's the same everywhere. So this is, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, right? So is this personalized to every tech company, or is it like a kind of software that you use for all
Right.
companies?
Great question. Great question. The realization here is every company is different, right? Every
Mhm.
person is different. At the same time, they all need to adhere to the same policies, laws, in particular around payroll, taxes, accounting, fiscal, legal. So the goal of automation is really to provide an efficiency level in terms of compliance with the market regulations, right? Because every company might be slightly different. Salaries will be different. Benefits will be different, but you still need to provide a few things that are mandatory, right? So it is partially personalized because there's always an element of it, but we see it more like, okay, we have the process, right? Now let's add whatever needs to be added from a personalization perspective that typically also happens at the company level, right? And so then you can run on top of the process and the algorithm and the platform that we have.
Uh, I see. It's a platform, but there's also room for personalization.
Correct. Yes.
Excellent. So Bridgin aims to decentralize organizations and promote flexible growth. How do you see this transformation impacting the future of businesses worldwide?
Yes. So I really think, and we live in troubling times, right? So when you think about the way that organizations are more resilient, they are more decentralized, I believe by inception, they are more resilient. First, they do lower geopolitical risks, right? If you put all your eggs in one basket, then suddenly by whatever acts of aggression or macroeconomics, that basket stops being a great solution, you have a huge impact. If you distribute it a little bit more or decentralize, you become more resilient as an organization. Besides that, you do reduce the pressure in terms of talent acquisition as well. Because if you increase the talent pool, because you're now drawing talent from multiple markets, you obviously reduce the pressure. Oh, I can't find someone with this expertise in this market. No, suddenly you are working in multiple markets. The other thing that I believe we hear a lot about that nowadays, but I truly believe is really important, is to increase diversity on organizations, right? And I guess the second impact of this is if you do decentralize and you have a more of a global reach, you also enable global operations, right? And that enables you to explore different markets that you might not be thinking early on. Some argue that you can have a more continuous delivery there's plenty of literature about follow the sun approaches in terms of someone in Asia starts and then in Europe picks up 2 hours later and then continues in the Americas. So arguably it's hard sometimes to pull together. It really gives you a much wider reach. So I believe it's completely strategic for companies to think like that and decentralize their growth instead of betting only in one location or one country.
Definitely. I just recently heard something. It says that if you want to expand your reach, find like a co-founder from a different country. So this
Right?
is what
Right?
you're doing, but with employees. And that makes a lot of sense because it's not only the fact that diversity creates better outcomes, but also like you get to explore new markets as well.
Right? Exactly
So
right.
you mentioned distributing tech hubs across different geographies. Can you share some insights into how you choose these locations and what benefits they bring to your clients?
Like I said, tech continues to be our focus, our niche. I would say more broadly, any job that is a knowledge workers, typically the type of thing that you do with a laptop, right? And an internet connection. Good geographies will be geographies where there is talent, right? There's typically, given that these are typically highly qualified jobs, you need to have good education within the country. But not just that, you need, and this is something interesting that I can tell you more from, like I said, an Iberia Peninsula, which is where we are focused. And we've seen in the last events, the pandemic, obviously the conflicts in Ukraine, in Israel and Palestine. What we've seen is Iberia is a fairly good region in the world to live. Very, thankfully, very peaceful under the European Union umbrella. So there's all obviously regulatory predictability. There's a strong currency with euro. And it's a nice place to live, right? So in the pandemic, we saw a lot of people from North Europe moving south, which is if I'm stuck at home, why am I stuck at home in cold Norway or whatever? And so it's not just the education and the level of graduates and highly qualified people that might be graduating every year, but it's also where do your teams want to go? So an interesting story we have is Ireland, which is a great country in terms of, for us, a lot of companies there that we've been working with. And interesting enough, they obviously have Ireland in Europe is a great base for, obviously because of some tax reasons as well, but that brings a lot of interest, a lot of knowledge people into the country. What has been happening is cost of real estate that is high everywhere has also been quite high in Ireland. So some people are considering, okay, I will want to move abroad. And guess what? When they are thinking, Portugal is an amazing proposition. Same time zone, just south, warmer, a little bit cheaper quality of living. So that is definitely one thing, right? Where is talent going? Where is talent being created as new graduates every year? And where is talent going? And so if you remove the aspect of the stronger economies, US, UK, whatever, you look at the other things. I will continue to focus on that. Other things, just quickly here, although we have this almost romantic view of the world united, there's obviously cultural differences between the different countries, right? And so some companies might not be ready to, start a team on a country that has very different cultural fit, right? So they might want to start a little bit closer. And let's face it, most of Western Europe and North America are very close culturally, right? So those are natural fits. The last one I would say is there is obviously a financial aspect as well. Some price arbitrage opportunities in terms of the cost of hiring someone. Right? If you compare, for instance, the cost of labor, taxes are actually not that fun. I guess they are never fun, but Europe tends to have higher taxes. But still, if you compare, for instance, Switzerland or Portugal, the cost of hiring someone in Portugal will be much lower. If you compare with the United States, the same, right? So there's also actually the opportunity, not only you are increasing your resilience as a company because you have tech hubs in more location, but you can actually potentially even save some money hiring folks on a country where the price pressure in terms of salaries is a little bit lower. There's a lot of good reasons, and we take really into consideration all of this.
Definitely. So there a lot of things are needs to be considered before like choosing which country you want to expand into. But also to ensure that there's like more of a cultural fit if you're like just starting out, like expanding. But yeah, I think it's really interesting how you're able to do this because I think in terms of this sounds a bit like outsourcing, but it's not because outsourcing you don't have centralized control. But this is like a really good way to outsource without outsourcing. So you're like in-housing the way that you usually would outsource.
Yeah, when you basically outsource the supporting functions, right? And that's something that I tell a lot, which is your what a company using Bridging is outsourcing or replacing, at least at the beginning, is all of the things they need to do from a compliance perspective, the legal, the accounting, the payroll, which let's face it, are you need to do it and they need to be done right, but they don't create value. They are just supporting functions, right? You need to have those, but your value creation is from your contributors building stuff or working with customers, providing a service or a goods. The payroll doesn't add any value, right? So you just need to get it done and as efficiently as possible. So that's what we focus.
Definitely. So starting Bridging in early 2020 must have been challenging with the pandemic.
on.
Can you walk us through some of the hurdles you faced and how your team managed to overcome them?
Yes, for sure. We started in January 2020. Guess what? 3 months after, the world changed, right? We were not even ready with our website and everything was changing. So yeah, 2020 was definitely hard. I feel more broadly, a lot of tech businesses grew tremendously with the pandemic because more tools and more technology was needed. We were simply too young to be able to benefit from it. So 2020 was really rough for us. And we were throughout the year basically in survival mode. We had zero revenues, and I would say more concerning even until fall. So until September, October 2020, we had no prospects. So imagine what it is. You start a business full of ambition ideas and no one wants to even talk to you for 8 months straight. Right. So yeah, it's resilience. What can I tell you? Right. It's nothing more than continue to believe in what you're trying to do, persist, obviously hard work. We also obviously needed to adjust to the times and continuously reinvent the go-to-market strategy. But in the end, also a little bit of luck. I can tell you that the first customers that came in and the first revenue we got in Q4 2020, if we didn't got any, maybe we didn't exist as a business, right? Because at some point you need to say, stop, let's not continue. But gladly we got it and we've been growing since.
I'm glad to hear you're able to overcome all these hurdles and we get to have this conversation here today. But
Yeah.
what I'm very curious about is like, was there like a specific mindset shift that allowed you to get your first customer? Like, what did you change in order to get that?
I don't think there was necessarily a significant shift. I just think
Mhm.
that, first of all, one of the things that the pandemic made a lot is companies starting to employ people remotely, right? And so there was a huge increase in this remote work. In particular, some companies, so-called employee of records, emerged and grew tremendously throughout this time. And as they say, a high tide lifts all boats. So we joined that, right? We start offering as well employee of record services. We focus on being, I guess, focus on the niche and being better within the niche, which was Portugal only at the time. And so, yeah, that helps a whole lot. We always and currently have a more broader view, but offering employee of record as a service that, companies were actively looking for helped us a lot in terms of getting customers because from SEO, for instance, we were optimizing for keyword search based on employer of record Portugal, and they would find Bridgin instead of other companies. So we really focus on the niche and understanding what customers were buying, because a lot of times we still see that today without what we call company as a service, right? This idea that you use a platform, you use a process to manage all of your needs as a company, still fairly new, right? You are used to talk with an accountant, send emails, have calls, maybe have on sites or in staff, maybe having outsourced. And so that is tough to attract customers from an inbound perspective when the customers don't know that you exist. They don't know how to search you, right? So we focus on serving a market where the customer was actually looking for something, and we focus on the niche and try to be the beta within the niche. Nothing too crazy. A lot of what we hear from marketing 101, but yeah, focusing on the niche, focusing on something that the market was looking, and that really helped us gain momentum.
Very interesting. So just getting in that niche that the customers are looking for and funneling that into your main platform. So they'll be using other services as well, right? So with a team of 19 people spread across the globe, how do you maintain effective communication and ensure everyone is aligned with Brishin's mission?
Yep. So I feel I'm cheating a bit here. And this is because I've been working in this multi-country, multicultural environment for the big part of the last 10 years, including being remote first for the last 8. So actually, before the pandemic, even before Bridging started, I was already working in such engagements. I built software engineering teams across the world. I have a bit of an experience in what works, what doesn't. There is no magic solutions really. Is you need to focus on, well, firstly, I believe that being more decentralized, as I typically say, Bridging is remote first, but not remote only, right? So we believe that being close and seeing each other face to face is important. I simply don't think that should be mandatory. Or again, every contributor, every person is different, right? And so why am I forcing people to go to the office if they can be efficient at producing their job, their output from any other location, from home office or whatever? I don't force them, anyone. But obviously there's always coordination between the teams. And this is the harder part within remote setups, right? I think the main one is you need to be asynchronous in communications. Very basic stuff, but using written first form in Slack or other tools so that you're not forcing someone to be live at that moment to be answering you. You leave a note when someone comes in and answers you. Also means that you need to be very verbose in communication to try to avoid misunderstanding, because we don't have the benefit of body language, right? When you're remote or particularly in written form. So you need to be very deliberate to try to avoid misunderstandings. But there's no way that you can avoid some alignment meetings, synchronous on video. And that's the other thing, right? Company policies, we have a team weekly meeting, and then there within smaller teams under the departments, there's further meetings, and they should be done with video turned on, right? So that we can get as close to being in real person as possible. And the last trick I would say is really put a lot of effort in hiring and selection of new employees. Focus on people that have autonomy, because you won't be able to hold their hands, and also the right attitude, because they need to be proactive. They can't be waiting for everything to land on their lap, because they won't. They need to actively go look for stuff. If they need something from someone, they need to send them a message and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I need to discuss something with you. So it's really setting good framework, good expectation, but as well hire people that have the level of autonomy and proactiveness to make it work.
Definitely. In terms of hiring for those people, do you have any recruiting tips? For example, you have to do, like you're hiring someone today, right? And what do you look out for? What are the red flags? What are the green flags for someone to come on a remote team?
I'll tell you this because it's something that we introduced this year in our recruitment process. And I think it's super simple, but I think it's very effective, which is throughout the recruitment process, we also made it more asynchronous. So what that means is we always need obviously live interviews, right? But we try to have on earlier stages more of an asynchronous communication. So we have videos where typically me and then the hiring manager present a bit of more about the role, the team, the goals, the expectations, all of that. And at the same time as we are giving information, we are asking for some information from the applicant. And one of the steps is we ask them to make a 2 minutes video presenting themselves and explaining their motivation to apply to the job position. And this feels something simple, but actually, if someone cannot use technology effectively to record a 2 minutes video, they will probably not be able to make it work later on, right? At the same time, if someone is super shy or they don't want to be in video, maybe it won't work as well, right? Because nobody is doing anything with the videos. We can't care less about no, it's just that we are asynchronous, we are remote first, so we need to be effective communicating through video. And so just by asking that, we guarantee that people are okay to be talking to a camera and okay with showing. And I think that makes a whole lot of difference in terms of getting the right profile. So something as simple as that, I think really helps us vet for appropriate candidates.
Definitely. So that kind of makes sure that you don't waste time on candidates who are too shy to be on video because that's really important for a remote team.
Right, right.
So you recently developed an in-house product to manage bureaucracies and clients' needs. Can you explain how this innovation has streamlined your operations and benefited your clients?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So like I was saying, all businesses actually have employees, they need payroll, right? They'll need tax, accounting, legal, fiscal, transfer pricing, sometimes visas. There's a lot of things. And even if law and tax code and all of that is always subject to interpretation, they are written, right? So it's like a protocol. And so if you have a protocol, you can automate, you can write an algorithm that guarantees that it follows the law, that follows the protocol defined as the law by the lawmakers. And so that enables to greatly automate repetitive work. Now, like we were saying earlier, there's a few things that are not the same. There's edge cases here and there. So we don't expect to automate 100%, but if you can automate 80%, that's a lot of work that is saved. It's all about building the platform, the processes, the algorithms to map what is the policies in place in the country, and also have a happy path, defined process that adheres to regulations that can then be automated. It's standardize and then automate, right? If you don't standardize, you can't automate. And the bit about standardization is, for instance, in Portugal, you need to have workers' compensation insurance for employees you have. That's part of the algorithm. Where you can get a bit more standardization is, instead of using every company uses a different provider with different rates, with whatever, what we do is we standardize, and we standardize by actually offering even more benefits to our customers because we negotiate in bulk on their behalf, right? So instead of having, let's say we have 100 customers in 10 different insurance brokers, right? No, we have the 100 customers maybe in 2 brokers, and we have way more volume in each so that we can have volume discounts to offer them. So actually the option of standardizing and reducing in terms of in different providers can actually mean more efficiency in terms of actually cost, right? So that's actually, when we started this, I didn't saw that coming. And one of the great things we've been realizing is we can offer volume discounts to our customers simply by the aggregated demand and offering them better services and solutions and bigger negotiating power.
Definitely. I think discounts is like a great way to, add on for your platform. So, Pedro, you've had a diverse career in software engineering and IT consulting. What key experiences shaped your vision for Britain? And how did your background influence the company's direction?
Yeah, thank you for the compliment. But I think when we look back and try to define ourselves, and I realize by now that I'm an engineer, I'm a builder at heart. That's also my education, computer science. But I feel I really live that idea. Even on leisure things, I'm a father of 3. I picked up on bonsai and gardening over the pandemic. So I like to nurture things and see them grow. And building a business is also a little bit of that. That idea of, if something seems inefficient, if something doesn't exist, let's create it. So that was really it. I had the pain of needing to deal and learn tax and legal and all of that myself on my first business. And so then I realized, okay, so the current solutions are very inefficient and very poor. So there must be a better way. And so let's build a business and bring technology and reverse engineering everything so that we can have a better solution for the problem and digitize it and all of that. I guess another motivation, and that's more than my background in engineering at university, but more my experience in IT consultancy and outsourcing companies is really the realization that, again, an outsourcing company financial incentive is to charge the biggest delta between what they can charge in hourly rates to a customer and what they can pay you, right? So when you are a contributor under this setup, the financial incentive of your employer is directly against yours, right? So that is a losing proposition, right? It's a losing proposition for software engineers to work through outsourcing companies. And that's why I wanted to offer a better solution for tech companies that want to get established, open tech hubs and employ people directly. So I believe it's a win. We cut an efficient middleman that is not creating a whole lot of value. And some experiences I have and understanding and looking from within to the industry made me also motivate to open Bridging and focus on this specific space.
I love that. I think, yeah, you're completely right. Like it creates a better working condition for everyone because it's not, yeah, it's always quite tough to be the one who is being outsourced. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And also I really like how you're built your business based on your own pain points. I think, yeah, some of the best businesses have been built that way. And I
Right.
really wonder, what was your first company?
Oh, no, it was basically me as a freelancer of sorts, providing services for foreign companies. So it would never scale. It was very consulting business, but actually the interesting thing it was that it led me to Bridge because I needed to suddenly need to deal with all the taxes and all the invoices, VAT this, VAT that. And okay, there's maybe something here.
So on a more personal note, have you faced any significant challenges or low points in your journey as a tech founder, and how did you overcome them?
Oh, absolutely. There's always are, right? And I think there's always blind spots, right? They say you don't more than the known unknowns. It's the unknown unknowns, right? What you don't know that you don't know. And I think any entrepreneur needs to be fairly confident, right? And have resilience. And I think I'm myself fairly confident person. I've built a successful career from high point to high point. But as they say, imposter syndrome is a real thing. Being a founder is very different from being a top manager in a company because in the end, you can't shift the problem to someone else. All problems land in your table. So you need to bear all the responsibility. And in a way, you need to like that because or else you won't continue, you won't survive. And things never go as planned. You still, as they say, you still need to plan, but they never go to plan, right? So you need to continuously be adapting, particularly on early stages, right? You need to continuously be adapting. So I think the first thing we need to be is really honest with ourselves. I do think there is a huge benefit, and probably these 4 years of Regine, what they have told me is that we need to also be honest with the team, be transparent, be also analytical and objective, right? Because anything that is subjective is subjective. But when you can have things that are objective, supposedly they are not debatable because they are objective measures or data points or whatever. I think that's very important to drive as objective, analytical as possible. Things will not always go right. You can't expect to, I told this to the team a few weeks back, which is definition of insanity. And this is another quote, is to do the same thing and expect different results, right? So when things are not working, you need to change it, right? Come what may. If you want different outputs, you need to try different things. And in terms of low points, which was also the second part, I guess it's really understanding how fragile it is the journey of being an entrepreneur and all the momentum. As I said earlier, we might have not survived 2020 if we didn't get a few customers early on. But even when we were getting some traction, and this was by mid 2021, we had a good forecast, a fairly good projection, but we had a cash flow issue. So we were running actually out of money to pay people. Then you need to put your hat, try to have friends and family just to lend you a little bit of money just to go through that slump. And it's really hard when you ask money to friends and family because you better as well be confident that you can pay them back, right? So I think someone needs to be confident, not overconfident, but have a vision, knowing where we want to be, resilient, but not stubborn, can be transparent and analytical, objective, because we are all subject to interpretation. We all have a background. We always will look at things with the lens of with our history, but we need to try to narrow things down to objective because results are results. So we can't, the more that we count, there's only one truth, right? Not, you can't bend the truth just because you want it.
Definitely. I think so. You're talking about like a balanced view, right? So if you're confident, you can't be overconfident because I think ego
Right.
can also
Right.
make you make terrible decisions. But also having no confidence makes you unable to make any decisions at all. Yeah. So I really wonder in the early stages, how did you deal with imposter syndrome? What were you telling yourself? Like, how did you overcome it?
I don't know. I just think it's get busy, do things, don't overthink it. There's definitely a roller coaster of emotions and periods. There's times that you just want to throw it all away and just disappear. But in those times, I just get busy. Instead of being, if you don't have the energy, the motivation, the clarity to be strategic, be operational. Go do things that you don't need to have the whole brain plugged in. You just produce value and you get things done and wait for a better day because the sun comes out and shining, right? It's not always summer, it's not always winter. There will be always better times. So you just need to control your own emotions in a little bit. So understanding that you feel that you can't make it, but let's get busy, focus, put the effort in.
I love that. So it's like a very action-based approach to imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
So what are some of the accomplishments you're most proud of, both professionally with Bridget and personally in your life?
Definitely being a father of three, I think it's a good accomplishment. Hopefully they'll grow up to be nice human beings and create some value for humanity. But I'm trying to do obviously my best, but I think they are so far growing well. So that's definitely one. I would say more on a career. I would say throughout my career, I truly believe that myself, I created more goods than potentially harm, right? Obviously, typically there's no significant harm that is created. There's here and there colleagues or whatever things that someone got upset with something. It's impossible to get everyone happy. But I honestly think if you ask anyone about Pedro, most of people will say good things. Maybe that the guy is a bit stubborn. Maybe the guy is too analytical, but I don't think they'll tell that I'm unfair or a bad actor or anything like that. And that's really a badge of honor, right? I think everyone should focus on creating more good than bad, and if something creates something more business wise in terms of bridging. Again, don't want to say that again, but from a company that almost didn't make it to reach 5 million in revenue last year, that's pretty solid, right? So it's not just the number. Obviously, it's starting to get an interesting number, but more than that is the business, right? The team. Look, 2020, I needed almost beg for people to believe me and join into building something. Now we have built a brand and a presence that we have every job position we open, we have hundreds of applications. Obviously, not all of them are great fits. It's amazing to see people believing it and seeing obviously some success, some the brand equity that we've been building and wanting to join us. And a really, I think it's honestly beautiful when you see a collection of human beings all focused and rowing to build something together. I think that's amazing, honestly. And I love that dynamic, having smart people, smart brains put together to accomplish something. It's also going back a little bit. It's also about the journey. Being an entrepreneur, you need to like the journey. If you're just focused on an exit strategy, whatever you might have thought, I think you'll be miserable for several years, right? You need to like the process of building.
So you've, you're definitely someone who wants to create value, who's creating value both in his personal and his professional life. Yeah, and I think it's a huge accomplishment accomplishing 5 million revenue last year, by the way.
Thank you.
And outside of your professional achievements, what are some of the hobbies or habits that you enjoy, and how do you maintain a balanced and fulfilling life?
I think I'm a workaholic, right? I must be honest here. Um, but not in a bad way. The interesting thing is I wake up every morning excited by what I have to do. And if I look back, this is interesting because do I like every individual action thing that I need to do? Not really. I deal with a lot of problems that escalate all the way to me. And fixing problems is not typically fun. So it's not like I like the actual units of work that I need to get done or solve, but I like the journey. Being a workaholic when it doesn't really feel work, it's, I think, good. Still, balance, right? It's important balance. And as I'm getting a little bit older, I'm feeling that, yes, you do need to avoid burnout. Obviously, I think the first signal is if you can't focus. And I also have a very analytical approach to it, which is there's very different types of work that one needs to do on their job. And there's, that type of work that is deep focus work that you need to be uninterrupted. You are creating something. You need to have full attention to what you're doing. And so you need to focus. You need to make sure that you don't have interruptions. But then there's a bit of work that it's just like answering shorter emails or just send something to someone. So let's face it, something that you can do a little bit more easily. So balancing between both, I think, is also important, right? You can't aim to do things that require a lot of mental investment all the time. You need to balance things that are a little bit more, requiring from a mental perspective, and other that are just more basic stuff. Still, hobbies and other stuff. So like I said, during the pandemic, I picked bonsai, more broadly gardening. So right now in my backyard, and I'm today on my home office, I have plenty of species growing. I love the idea, by the way, of nurturing a small tree and eventually getting big so that you can sit in the shade later on. Love that idea. So definitely gardening and bonsaiing, I picked that up. I also got myself to actually start doing some exercise, which I was very seated all day. And what I realized is, again, it's more healthy for you to actually move, also walk, maybe run, maybe whatever sports you like. But I think that's important, right? And I must say that it's not that I love walking or running, but I think it's important that you build some exercise within your life because it also gives you a bit of an escape from other problems, right? You go there, just focus on the exercise. You're not focusing on all the problems. So anyway, all in all, and this was something interesting as well. During the pandemic, I relocated. So I moved within the country, but I moved way farther apart from the city, as I guess a lot of people did. And one of the great things that I think to me created a very good balance is to have a lot more outdoor. So it's nature, good or bad. I think it's just nature is there, right? And I think it's humbling to see how the trees, the rivers work without you needing to worry about those. So I think that gives me peace of mind. And so one of the things as well that I would, definitely recommend everyone is to seek that happy place that they can fall to when they are going through some troubles or some difficulties. You have some safe place that you can go to, either watching the sea, walking in the woods, whatever. But I think that's usually really well. And there's a great book, I can't recall the name, but talks a lot about solitude. And I think that also takes, we live sometimes too much busy lives. Everyone wants something from you or asking or phoning or whatever. It's important that you have some time to be a deeper thinker. Take some time, spend some time in the nature, do walks, do whatever. I think that's an important part to get that equilibrium.
So you're becoming more balanced from being more of a workaholic early on.
Yeah,
I heard this quote that it says that successful entrepreneurs, they become successful and then they tell everyone to balance their lives, but initially they weren't balanced.
yeah, I think I can see why it is, right? You want to build something. You not only have the pressure, but you also want to get it there. So until you get, again, so you need to build a significant sized business for you to be able to take 2 weeks off on vacation. Because if you have very small, things will fall apart the day you stop. Yeah, you need to work hard to build something for them to be able to at least relax a little bit and hopefully continue to grow. But yeah, I think that's very accurate.
Definitely. And I think your advice on burnout is very useful because I think a lot of people, they put too much focused work like in their schedule and then they get really burned out. And then, yeah, so I think it's maybe one focused work and then one non-focused work be useful.
Yeah, right.
So this end of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining and sharing all your advice and expertise. And I'm sure our audience will benefit a lot from this.
Thank you so much for the invite. Glad to be here.